My name is Charlie Schaupp. I'm running for vice chairman of the California Republican Party. I'm going to tell you why in a few minutes, but first let me tell you about who Charlie Schaupp is. I'm from Northern California. I got up at 2 o'clock in the morning to drive to San Francisco to get on an airplane to fly down and talk to you ladies today. Why did I come down here? Because the Republican Women Federated is so very important to the future of the California Republican Party. In the past, I've spoken to the Sonoma Republican Women, the Solano Republican Women Federated, the Napa, all three groups in Napa, I've talked to them. I've talked to the Butte County Republican Women. I've talked to the Siskiyou Republican Women. I've been all over the state talking Republican women. Why? Because we need you. One feather in your cap. We have so many groups in the Republican Party that use the name Republican. California Republican Assembly, California Congress Republicans, California Republican League, California Impact Republicans. All they do is fight with each other. You never see the Republican women pick a fight with anybody unless they're a Democrat. So bravo to you. Now, let me tell you who I am. I'm the son of a farmer. I grew up in Hungry Hollow area of Esparto, which is up in Yolo County. My great-grandfather settled there in the 1880s and started farming. We're still farming. My family farms about 3,000 acres, and I went to my hometown high school that my parents went to. My grandfather didn't get to go to school. He only got through 8th grade because that was back in 1916, but he went straight to farming. Then I went to Yuba College up by Marysville and got a degree in agricultural business. Then I went to Chico State and got a degree in soil science, soils, irrigation, drainage in agriculture. So I know something about water. But I did more than that. When I was in high school, I helped make this group called Students for Nixon. I learned something on that. Be careful who you support. Make sure you support honorable Republicans. So when Ronald Reagan ran for president of the United States, I was at Yuba College. I formed up a group called Students for Reagan up at Yuba College. He didn't win in '76, but by 1980, I was up at Chico State, and I got the kids up in Chico ready, and we formed Students for Reagan in 1980. And it was great, because Ronald Reagan won. And here I am, about to graduate from Chico State, and Ronald Reagan won. Now, I'm supposed to go home and work on the farm, because, you know, my parents spent a lot of money, helped me go to school and all that stuff. And no, Ronald Reagan's president. I want in on this. I went and found the OSO, the Officer Selection Officer for the United States Marine Corps, and I signed up. I didn't tell my parents. I just decided I wanted to be a Marine officer. And they were supposed to send everything to Chico. And they sent one letter to my family's residence, and it didn't say candidate Schaupp, it said private Schaupp. And I went home one day, and Mom goes, "Oh my God, you just graduated from college and you're going to be a private in the Marine Corps?" I go, "No, Mom, I've signed up for the officer candidate program. My dad was an officer in the Korean War." So I signed up, and off I went. I spent 28 years off and on with the Marine Corps. I retired as a lieutenant colonel. I'm a veteran of the Desert Storm, 1981. I was the commanding officer of 4th Landing Support Battalion, Company B. We're at Lathrop, California, and I was made the commanding officer of 4th Company B, 2nd Landing Support Battalion when we mobilized and went off to fight the war. And I was on the 4th wave going into Kuwait. Matter of fact, the day before the ground invasion, I was tasked to take 20,000 gallons of fuel and 20,000 gallons of water and 50,000 gallons of fuel up to Assembly Area Red, 5 miles in front of friendly forces, and dig in so we could top off the tanks the next morning. I sat there and watched the Iraqi army drive around about 5 miles from me, burning off those oil fields. And lo and behold, we had this big oil smoke come over us. And by 6 o'clock in the evening, we couldn't even see each other. So I brought everybody into their secondary positions to guard that oil. And I tell you, the Iraqi army, they gave us the best smoke screen an attacking force ever had in history. They couldn't see us all night long. And all night long, we had everything flying overhead, hitting Iraq. At 6 o'clock in the morning, it went dead silent, and I grabbed a Marine Corps flag. I didn't have an American flag, I had a Marine Corps, and I put it up on a tall pole, and my first sergeant says, "Sir, what are you doing?" I go, "I'm putting the Marine Corps flag." He goes, "The enemy is going to see that." Look, these tanks are coming to our tanks. I want them to know we're Marines up here, not the enemy. He goes, oh, good idea, sir. Anyway, so I stayed in the Marine Corps. I loved it. I did the Bosnia Peace Enforcement Operation in 1997, 1998. And I was off, I did many things all over the world, but on 2001, I had just gotten home from Okinawa, Japan, where I was the 3rd Marine Division, and I turned the TV on, and the Twin Towers, one of them was already down. And I watched the second one collapse. And I called the mom, I go, Mom, we're gonna be in war with a week, you're not gonna see me in a while. And for the next 7 years, I was overseas, fighting wars. I went to right back to 3rd Marine Division. I became the training officer, then current operations officer, then force protection anti-terrorism officer, and then in 2004 they sent me off to Fallujah, where I joined the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force, that's the senior command element in Iraq, and I became the security officer for the Al Anbar province. My job was to classify, to safeguard with the G2 all classified materials and make sure only the right people had to see it. They had to know the right to see the classrooms to protect our forces. And I came back, and then when I got back to Okinawa, they said, we need a deputy camp commander. I go, okay, what's that? He said, well, you're gonna run Camp Courtney, 5,000 Marines, sailors, their wives, their family. I ran everything from Dodia schools, that's the public school system, to the police, to the engineers, to you name it. So I have a huge background. But also, I'm involved in the public. I've been the former chairman of the Yolo County Republican Party. I spent 8 years on a school board where I got a school bond passed in a conservative farm district with a whopping 75% of the vote yes to build new schools. Now, you don't do that unless you have something called leadership. And that's who Charlie Schaupp is. I'm running now for the vice chair of the state. I told Jim Brolte 2 years ago I wanted to run for vice chair. And he said, no, Charlie, I want to have somebody named Christine Olson be the vice chair. So I withdrew and said, okay. And I said, Jim, you're going to have trouble. Sure enough, he had trouble. She had to step down. And so now I am going to take a second shot at it. I'm going to take a second shot at it because we're in trouble. We just got licked, and we got licked bad. You know, all the money in the world cannot win an election if you don't have the candidate, and you don't have the leadership, and you don't have the ground forces on the ground to walk the precincts. That's called our central committees. And Steve was right. We're not supporting our central committees. I looked at the balance of delegates that go to our state party. The lion's share comes from the caucus and the elected members in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C., and the people that ran for office. It's not coming from your county chairs. It's not coming from the grassroots. We haven't had a bounty in a decade, it seems like. We haven't focused on registering Republicans. We haven't focused on getting new candidates. Even Jessica knows, a couple years ago, I hooked her up with somebody I want to get to run for office who's a young girl of Lao background from Laos, who would make an outstanding candidate. But we have to reach out for these people and get them, and then we got to get them coordinated and get them to run. Now, Brolte's a good friend of mine, but we disagree and disagree and disagree. I told him 2 years ago he needed to work on staff operations in Sacramento and with his staff, or we're going to lose. And we lost. One of the things I did in the Marine Corps was staff operations. That's where you actually have to do the planning. Now, Steve talked about the W's. I'm going to talk about the 4 P's. Prior planning prevents a urination per performance. You know, we got to do our plans. We got to empower our central committees. We have to do it. In the Marine Corps, when I went to Bosnia, for the Bosnia Corps, General Bedard's staff nicknamed me the Pit Bull. And there was a reason why he nicknamed me Pit Bull. I don't put up with much crap. I really don't. We lost, and we've got to start winning. And I want a strong party chair. I can work with Steve. I like Steve. I'm supporting Steve. But Jessie can do it too. She's knowledgeable. But Steve is an old cantankerous, he hates that word, cantankerous guy, and that's what we need right now. Somebody to go up there and start leading the party and start making us win again. Because if we don't, we're dead. Now, to do that, you need, in the military, and I spent a lot of time in the military, you need a qualified deputy commander what we call the executive officer in the Marine Corps. The commander gives guidance, and the executive officer makes it happen. My job is going to be many-fold as your vice chairman. One of them is going to be to recruit candidates. One of them is going to be to re-empower the County Chairmen's Association and the county chairs and start getting the money. Do you know that some of the people on our state party didn't want to send money down to the county chairs because we don't believe in welfare? It's not welfare. The command element is responsible to provide the beans, bullets, and bandages so that the fighting troops on the ground can fight the war. And if you don't do that, they're not going to have what they need to win. And we didn't win because we're not helping our people at the lower level. I'm going to make sure the beans, bullets, and bandages, what they need back at the county levels, at the grassroots, gets down there. I'm also going to be a cantankerous guy when it comes to running the staff. My job will be, whoever the state chair is, to make them successful. That's what a deputy does. I'm going to push and push and plan and do what we have to do until we start winning again. Because if we don't start winning again, our state is doomed. Our party will be doomed. And then lastly, a vice has to figure out whatever the guidance is of the state chairman and the state party and make sure all tasks, both direct and implied, get done. And then, of course, the vice chairman has to be ready to stand up and lead in the absence or loss of the chairman. Because it's not about who the chair is or who the vice is or who the executive board is. It's who the Republican Party is. Our job is to serve you, the Republican Party. I can be very tenacious when I need to be, but I can also be very eloquent when I need to be and when it's proper. One of the jobs I had in the Marine Corps was to escort Prime Minister Brundtland, equivalent to their president, around the USS Wasp one time when we were in Norway, because the generals knew that I had many skills and many abilities. But I'm in front of you today because I want this job. My wife looks at me, who's a wonderful gal who I met in Korea when I was 48 years old. Never been married, met a gal in Korea, and I was just totally taken off my feet. We've been married 15 years. She is a beautiful, don't tell too many people this, but I met her, I proposed within a week, and I had never been married because she was just it. And you know when you find it. Anyway, what my job is going to be is to make the party successful, make the chairman successful, and to never, ever, ever give up or surrender. We're not giving up. We're going to raise the money. I want you to realize how bad a shape you are. Steve touched on it a little bit. $36 million. You know what we got left? $500,000. We got enough money to run the state party for 3 months after the convention. We're broke. The first thing whoever the state chair is going to have to do is get on the phone with his entire executive board and start dialing for dollars and dial and dial and dial. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to pay the bills. It takes $3 million a year to run the California Republican Party, because in that you have wages, you have paid staff, you have electrical bills, you have mortgages have to be paid, you have insurance that covers all of us, all the central committees. All these things have to be paid. That takes money. So we're going to have to raise a lot of money, and we're going to have to get it down to the grassroots as much as possible to re-empower the people that are going to win. But on that, my wife, who I just told you about, said, "Charlie, you're crazy. Why do you want this job? This is going to be one of the toughest jobs you ever have to do, and you're not going to get paid." It's because I want to save our party. I want us to win again. I will give every ounce of my tenacious, never give up ability if we can get this party around and we can win. I'm Charlie Schaupp. I'm running for state chair. I am a cantankerous old Marine farmer from Northern California. And if you want to know more about me, or you know some delegates, go online and look up charlieschaupp.info, and everything's in there. If you know a delegate, let them know. We need to save the party. Let's make it happen. We need to beat those Democrats because our future's at stake. Thank you.